because it's a cube of meat. You got to take it out.
It's Chaticha National Vela. It's small, right?
It's not nothing to do with Chaticha National Vela. It's the piece itself. The piece itself is something you could see. It's an isser that is be'ain. You're able to see it. So if you're able to see it, then there's no such thing as bittul. The thing is there. Don't tell me bittul. So the point over here is if it's dirty, obviously all the koshering in the world is not going to help. So you have to clean it up. After you go ahead and you clean it, right? So if you have a blowtorch, we gave a story earlier about a guy who burnt down an old age home with a blowtorch. So be very careful with the blowtorch. Probably ask a professional to help you. And even the guy who burnt down the old age home was a professional.
I asked professional, you destroy my stuff.
What a good idea.
So
if it's old stuff,
burn down the old age home professionally. Right, exactly.
So what you could go ahead and do is you could clean it up properly. Go ahead and you could cover it. You have to ask it up, but maybe you could go ahead. Maybe you should go ahead and do hagala on just the stove. A stovetop has burners, and in between the burner is just like part of the stovetop, but it's not actually from the fire, right? It's what happens is you make, let's say, an egg, and the oil sprays onto the stovetop. So that maybe you could get away with hagala. You have to ask a rav, for that. But still, again, cover it up, and then you have a couple of options. One option is you could take the grates, right, the cover of the stovetop, and the actual pieces of metal that you put the pot on. They're called grates. So you could take those. You could, in theory, you could kasher them. I mean, I can tell you in practice, every time I tried to kasher them in a high temperature, they ended up cracking, like whatever. So I'm not sure. A lot of people say you could do a self. The way you kasher an oven is you put on self-clean.
You should turn it.
So if you put it into self-clean, while it's in self-clean, you also put in the grates.
No.
After you clean it out.
Self-cleaning oven, that's how.
Or is that
In
self-cleaning
oven
is
you're gonna
considered
kill.
the whole process?
Self-cleaning,
koshering,
I wouldn't try.
No, first you have to clean. If it's not clean, there's nothing to talk about.
Maybe self-cleaning twice.
That's actually regular above it, koshering.
But no, you have to first. It has to be clean. If it's not clean, there's nothing to talk about. And by the way, we didn't even mention this, but when it comes time to kosher something, it's best to wait 24 hours before you go ahead and kosher it, right? So this way, it shouldn't absorb itself. So clean it, wait, and then go ahead and kosher it. So the point over here is that you should go ahead and take these grates and put them into the oven, put on self-clean. It's one way. Another way is to buy kosher Pesach grates. A lot of people do that. So sometimes they're not so expensive, especially on older ovens. They have standard sizes, and that's often a very good solution. But that's the way how you could do it. I could tell you that if you have a fancier oven or a fancier stovetop that might be electric, some of those things you can't really kosher because to do hagala is not good enough because it's piping hot. It's literally fire, and to do with a blowtorch will just destroy your oven. So at that
hot water.
No, hagala is the hot water. So there's nothing you could do. Some people say that you could turn an iron onto full boil. We actually didn't really talk about hagala properly, but part of doing hagala is boiling the water and then pouring the water onto the surface that needs. By the way, there's two different hagalas. There's hagala for the kalim, and then there's hagala on top of a surface. So part of doing the hagala on a surface would be you pour the hot water onto the surface, and then to make sure that the water stays hot to do its thing, you then take what's called an even hamelubin. You take a boiling hot stone, not boiling.
No, you take piece of metal, screw, make it very hot and drop it.
So the different ways of doing it. I heard a good one. I'll be very careful with this one though. It is a good one. Is that you get an iron. Get it hot, unplug it, right? Make sure you unplug it before you go ahead and do this, and go over it. That was a very good. That was actually very.
You're gonna kill the iron 90%.
That was a pretty good way. When I was growing up, and nowadays they sell hagala kits with a special like a cage that holds a brick. And when I was growing up, we used to have my father used to take a brick and wrap it up in a hanger, and that was it. But all these things, you got to be very careful because it's really...
Brick? You're going to make brick hot?
Yeah, for sure. That's an even hamelubin.
Brick doesn't absorb.
How do you think they make bricks?
No, you put the brick until until it's so hot. You know the
Just
idea
take
is
few screws and it's very easy. The screws gonna get red and you drop it all over the place.
Knives don't have screws, they have
No, I'm
rivets.
saying
All
take
right.
one metal screw.
So that
take
is-
kosher
Rivets.
spoon
It's
or not
rivets.
kosher spoon.
It's not screws, it's rivets. You can't unscrew
Doesn't
it.
matter.
Where's the
I'm talking about to make water boiling. You put
Okay,
boiling
let's
water
go ahead
will
and-
become
let's go ahead and
colder.
talk
So to
about-
make it boiling, you also make hot
there
couple
like a
screws,
number
and
of
then you
degrees,
drop those
100
screws, and water gonna
degrees
boil
for
right
that.
away.
boiling. Yeah, boiling is 212.
Or
All
take
right, let's go ahead and talk
any
about
metal
kashering
tool,
the sinks.
any plier.
Okay, when it comes time to
completely
kasher your
metal,
sink,
make
now a
it
sink
hot
is
and
something
drop it.
that you don't have your own one for Pesach, unless you're graced with a kosher Pesach kitchen, which I wish you all to have.
Amen.
I wish myself to have as well
Amen.
one day. But until then, you got to kasher your kitchen. So you got to kasher your sink. So there's a couple of things over here.
Very
So
simple.
there's-
You break your house, you build new one.
Oh man. Okay. So Israel Manas Livness. Okay. So there's a couple of things. You have different types of sinks. If you have a sink that's made out of porcelain, right? Porcelain is like a klicheres.
Okay.
And therefore, we said earlier that klicheres, there's no way to kasher it. So if that's the case, there's nothing that you could go ahead and do over here. The only thing that you could do is clean the sink very, very well, and then use an insert. Because you cannot use the sink directly. If you have a sink that's made out of enamel,
Yeah.
so there are those who hold that you're supposed to say that it's like porcelain, so there's nothing you could do. There are those who say that that you could go ahead and get away with hagala if you do hagala 3 times with a boiling brick, okay, with a hot Evan Lubin like we described, and afterwards again you should go ahead and you should still cover it. Nevertheless, however you're going to kasher your sink, now we're going to get to a metal sink in a moment, but however you kasher your sinks, or you can't kasher your sink, it's very, very good idea to have an insert. Now, part of the insert, right, you should make sure that the sink doesn't get stopped up, because then it doesn't help you, that the water gets clogged and then comes back up. So also, be aware with what's going on. Okay, if you have a metal sink, which most people have nowadays, a metal sink, this is what most people have. The first thing is you have to clean it out properly. All right, so this way, visually, it's clean. The next thing that you should do is you should try to clean it up with either Liban Kal, which is just going over it with a blowtorch, but please be very, very careful, because the way how the sink is attached, first of all, a cheap metal sink could just get a hole in it. And now you have a sink with a hole. Right? It could literally burn a hole through your sink, so that's a problem. And even if not, the way how the sink is joined to the counter, it's not so simple. And if not, then you should go ahead and do hagala. Again, doing hagala it's tricky because the sink is usually curved. So how are you going to do hagala? So the first thing is you're going to go ahead and you're going to boil up your pot of water. You're going to pour that pot of water in over your sink, and you're going to go over it with your Evan Habalubin, either your brick or your stone, and afterwards you're going to go over the entire countertop, the entire sink with your stone, and that's basically it. Afterwards, okay, like we mentioned with all kashering, that before you go ahead and kasher something, you need to wait 24 hours before you can kasher it with hagala, right? Because Liban burns away whatever is on the inside. Hagala makes the hagala with the boiling water makes the material reject or spit out what was in it, right? So you don't want to spit it out and then take it back in, because it spits out not kosher, or in this case chametz, and puts it back in. So best you have to wait 24 hours. And what happens then is that what it's spitting out is not good enough to go back in, and you're good to go.
I'm sorry, say it.
Could
Can you
you
repeat it?
stir now also? Smear it all over the sink inside and light it up, and pour hot water while it's burning, like in the side.
I have a feeling every time I see those, I think that's probably what they used in Vietnam. Okay.
Instead of blowtorching, like you
Yeah.
could smear it.
Yeah, okay.
Carefully.
Yes. Okay. sink faucet, right? How are you going to go ahead and clean your faucets? So clean it as to your best as possible. That's right. Really, always step one is to make sure it's visually clean. So clean it as much as possible, and then then you got to pour hot water over it. So this way, it's koshering it. But if you're able to take it off and pour out water, so how much better, right? If you're able to take off the faucet, great. But if not, then pour hot water over it, and afterwards you should go ahead and cover it. Also, some people put a like a filter special for Pesach, so this way. By the way, you'd be surprised what comes out of your sink.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever changed the filter in your sink. It's this, some of these things are disgusting.
Brown.
It's not just like it's bugs and I don't know what, and I'm not saying bugs.
No, it's rust. And
the point
dirt.
is rust, and there's also stuff in the water itself. So all said and done, put on a filter for Pesach, and very, very good. Okay, we spoke about koshering a oven. We said put it on to self-clean. If you can't put it on to self-clean, at least put it on to full blast. Okay, cleaning out a refrigerator. That's something that you probably don't have a spare one. So the way how you clean out a fridge is basically clean it out. Again, start step one, make sure it's visually clean. Clean it out properly and wipe it down, and after wipe it down with a wet and then wipe it down with a dry. And a lot of people have accustomed to cover their fridges and their shelves in the fridge with lining paper, and this is basically the right thing to do. The same thing over here is going to go with.
It depends if it's a glass shelf
Glass
or if it's a like a railing kind of a thing. Because if you cover the railings, then the cold doesn't circulate.
Oh, so make a hole.
Yeah,
What do you mean?
In other words, if it's bars, like the shelf made out of like metal bars, like a railing.
No, this is an industrial fridge. Your fridge has. Yeah.
I'm saying if the shelves are glass, then you're good. But if they're made out of like little bars,
yeah.
then the cold has to circulate inside, and if you cover it with with aluminum, then it doesn't.
It's gonna be less. It's gonna be more job for refrigerator, but it's still gonna do the job. Slower.
Yeah, it might not, but this is it's a good point. Maybe you have to get different racks.
Or make holes in between
Or maybe make holes for ventilation. Okay, when it comes time to closets, right? Everyone in their kitchen, they have a pantry with closets. So of course, the first thing is to make sure it's clean. So step one is get rid of the chametz. Step two is make sure it's clean, and of course, lay down some type of lining or lay down some type of paper. Okay, now a table and a counter, right? So the idea is like this. If you have a table or a counter that's made out of a synthetic material, like let's say it's made out of linoleum or formica or some other type of synthetic material, you have to clean it up very well, and there's no koshering synthetic material, so therefore you are just going to go ahead and cover it with some type of a cover or
No, but you
with a
could
liner.
drop boiling water and then cover it.
No, there's no reason to, because it's not doing anything. If you have if your counter is made out of linoleum or formica or some other type of
plastic, basically.
Plastic, there's nothing. Putting boiling water is nothing. Make sure it's clean and cover it up, because boiling water is to kosher it, but you can't kosher it. So you can't kosher it, so that's it. If you have a type of countertop that you could kosher, so I'm not an expert in these countertops, but from what I understand, stone, right, like we said, stone countertops, stone kalim could be koshered. For example, a marble countertop, or let's say a granite countertop. I believe these are things that could be koshered, but again, you have to double check. If it's made up of some type of a compound, which is very popular, of ground up stone with glue, like we said, the same thing with kalim, you don't really have an option to go ahead and kosher it with water, because it's the same thing like a pottery or like a clay countertop, and you can't kosher kalim. Okay, some other things. It's very important to make sure that the chairs are clean, right? So again, you're not koshering your chairs, but you're eating in your chairs a whole week, a whole year. So one of those things to do is just make sure you're wiping down, just to wipe down the chairs, and just to clean it out, and And that's basically that.
Not to
Okay.
say the cover.
If you have a high chair, of course, clean it out properly. There's no koshering a high chair, right? Because a high chair is made out of plastic or whatever. But if it has a fabric seat cover or something like that, you're able to take off and wash. So that's a very good thing. All right. So we basically spoke about many halachas of koshering, but the real rule of koshering is as follows: make sure it's clean. Make sure the way that it got hot is the way that you intend to kosher it. Obviously, where you're able to have dedicated Pesach Kalim, have dedicated Pesach Kalim. And of course, before you kosher, double check with a Rav, practicing Rav, to make sure that you're koshering correctly. And like we said, certain things can't be koshered. It doesn't hurt to always double check beforehand. Okay, 30 days before Pesach, what will we do? So we're already Shloshim Yom Kodim Chag, but most of these halachas are, not so relevant because at this point the time already went through. But we're supposed to learn some of the halachas of Pesach. But one thing is very important, in case you forgot, make sure that you're not doing it, is that we don't eat matzah now until Pesach, right? So if you have matzah in your house, don't eat matzah. We actually had an interesting question that came up. What if it's different type of matzah? Right, so let's say you have matzah ashira. Matzah ashira is basically matzah that's mixed with eggs or mixed with fruit juice.
Yeah.
So is this considered matzah? So this way you're not allowed to have matzah ashira before Pesach. Also had another one.
Matzah shira, you can't do. It's not matzah.
Matzah. We don't eat matzah ashira. We don't eat matzah ashira.
For 30 days or for how long?
Matzah with chocolate.
We don't. So matzah with chocolate, l'chera is like regular matzah, but just happens to have chocolate on it. But we have. But so I also heard a smart to say in a different way that machine matzah doesn't have the same taste as hand matzah. So maybe you could eat machine matzah before Pesach.
Yeah, I mean.
But it's
I'm not,
matzah.
again,
Some
I'm
people,
not saying,
my parents gonna use it for the seder.
but you're not gonna touch it. So in that case, it doesn't have the flavor of
Maybe I
matzah.
do.
Oh, so if you do, so then it has the taste of matzah, right? Everything goes after the taste. Some communities, they have soft matzah.
Yeah, Taimanim.
They have like Teimanim, or some other communities, they have like, they make before Pesach like a lafa matzah, right? It's a real thing. So I had a question: Am I who does not eat such matzah on Pesach allowed to eat this matzah erev Pesach?
Yeah, you could.
Right. So this was the question. So it's a smart to say that you could, because it's a completely different taste. It's not the same thing. On the other hand, it is matzah for somebody. So what are you supposed to say?
I heard that's
Okay.
how matzah, original matzah was.
So we had this conversation, not in the kollel, but someone told me, only up until recently the matzahs
They
were
never
like
had
that.
this hard bricks. They used to have normal.
That's what they said, but I don't know. When I was looking it up in Shulchan Aruch, it seems to be that already.
Shulchan Aruch was written 200, 300. It was 2000s.
So already more than 800 years ago, they had crispy matzah. More than 800 years ago. So in the time of Rabbeinu Yerucham says that the matzah has to be crispy.
Yeah.
It cannot be soft. Okay,
Taimanim, they make it soft.
go argue with Rabbeinu Yerucham, and I'm sure he didn't make it up. I'm sure he had it by Kabbalah. Okay.
It has to be round also.
Just to what we were saying about matzah, the Rebbe wanted that everybody should go ahead and, there's a concept of mois chitim, that means you should give tzedakos. This way you can help out people who cannot cover the cost of Pesach and the cost of matzah and the cost of the 4 cups of wine and so on and so forth. So it's a very, very big mitzvah to give mois chitim, to give to people the help, money to help with the cost of Pesach. Along those lines, the Rebbe wanted that we should send round matzahs to everybody. This way, you should have a taste of what authentic matzah is. So that's why I'm going to tell you. This is what it is. Since the time I told you, since the time Rabbeinu Yerucham, it was like this. So the point is that even though you can have square matzah, still it's a nice thing that you should send to everybody that you know who might be only using square matzah. You should send them also a round matzah. At least they could use it by the seder. And this is the way how this goes. Okay. minhagim of Chodesh Nisan. So by now you already know there's no tachnun in Chodesh Nisan like we had in the Sikha from last week. In part it was because this part of Chodesh Nisan is because of the Nisim, and then from the rest of Pesach you have Erev Pesach and Pesach itself. Those are Yom Tovim, so no tachnun, and then you have the rest of the month, which is only a couple of days, so it gets absorbed. Therefore, there's no tzidkascha, there's no tachnun. That's how this goes. Now, in the event that you're someone who fasts, you don't fast on Pesach. However, if you are bechar, a firstborn, then you should fast on Erev Pesach. If you are, so that's basically what the becharim do. Next, it's our custom to make a bracha on
True.
We spoke about the Nasiim last week, how you're supposed to say the Nasi, and it's also, we said that even if you're from Shevet Levi or you're a Kohen, then you should go ahead and still say the Nasi, even though you're for sure not from that Shevet, but it's still very important to do so. Okay, it's our minhag that when it comes to the month of Nisan, the Torah says that it's the Chag HaOsiv, the Chag HaAviv, the Yom Tov of the spring. So we all know that spring, what's the spring? That the flowers are blossoming, all the things are blooming, and so on and so forth. So that's Chag HaAviv. And for that reason, it's always around Pesach time that the trees are blossoming. So if you see a fruit tree that is blossoming around Nisan time, or from Chodesh Nisan, okay, then you could go ahead and make this bracha. You'll probably have to look up the bracha, but we say Chisar B'Elam Klum, that nothing is lacking in Hashem's world. He bara by Brias Tevis, He created the world with good trees and good creations. Lahonis B'Hem Adam, so this way mankind should be able to delight in them. If you forgot to make this bracha and you saw such a tree, and then you said, "Oh, I forgot," and you came back the next day to the tree, you can't make the bracha. So only the first time that you see the tree is when you could go ahead and make this bracha. You could only make this bracha on a fruit-bearing tree. You cannot make this bracha on just a non-fruit-bearing tree.
Only once per year, or like every time you see different?
It's once per year. It's once per year. There are those who say that there needs to be 2 blossoms on the tree before you go ahead and you make a bracha.
3 blossoms on Crown Street.
On Crown Street?
Yeah.
So you used to have signs, like a couple signs.
I know there always forever there was on Montgomery Street between Brooklyn and New York. There was always this tree on the south side of the block.
Oh, with the bracha, yeah.
Okay. However, b'diavad you're able to go ahead and make the bracha on a tree that only has 1 blossom. All right, we're going to try to squeeze in a few more halachas. Shabbos before Pesach, we all know it's called Shabbos HaGadol. The reason why it's called Shabbos HaGadol is because on this Shabbos, the Mitzrayim themselves killed each other. Hashem caused it to be that there was a civil war. The firstborns of Mitzrayim, they went ahead and waged war with everybody else. So this way the Yidden should be able to leave, because everything that Moshe said happened. And then Moshe said, if you don't let them go, then Makas B'cheres is going to happen. The firstborns didn't want to die, so they waged a civil war. They obviously lost. But this is what we say, L'makim Mitzrayim b'vchereim, that the B'cherim themselves is not to hit Mitzrayim through their B'char. In other words, that by killing their B'char, this is how we hit Mitzrayim, but rather the B'cherim themselves, with the B'char, is how Mitzrayim was hit. For this reason, the Shabbos is called Shabbos HaGadol. Now, it happens to be that Pesach...
Was the Chodesh Hazeh Lachem, Hashem said Shabbos HaGadol?
One second. It happens to be that year it was also Shabbos. But it really happened on the 10th of Nisan, which is the same kvias as this year. Shabbos is going to be the 10th of Nisan, right?
Oh, wow.
But what happened was like this. On the 10th of Nisan, many years later, Miriam Hanaviah passes away.
Yeah.
So in part, it was also established not on the 10th of Nisan, but on the Shabbos before Pesach. Okay. Shabbos HaGadol, the minhag is that the rabbi gives a sermon in Shul about the halachas of Pesach, and making sure that everyone knows what to do with Pesach. Now, what is relevant over here? By Shabbos HaGadol, by after Mincha, we go ahead and we read Avodim Hayinu. From the Haggadah, we start reading from Avodim Hayinu all the way until the Chaper al Kolav Nesinu, which is basically the lion's share of the Haggadah. It's printed in most Sidurim. We don't say Hinayim and Atakadosh after davening because by Ma'ariv on Motzei Shabbos, because Pesach is always going to be in the week of Shabbos HaGadol, right? That's the way how this goes. Okay, the truth is there are many, many more halachas to cover. We covered a lot of Haggadah, we covered a lot of kashering and getting ready, but I have to make this important announcement, that is that before you do something that comes up once a year, for example, B'dikas chametz, you only do it once a year. We do it the night before Pesach. Bir chametz, you only do once a year. You only do it on the day Erev Pesach, right? So all of these things, it's very, very important to try to look up the halachas beforehand to make sure you're doing it correctly. A mitzvah that comes only once a year is special because you have opportunity only to do it once. And on the other hand, it's also a little exotic. It's not something that everybody knows. Nobody, if you start asking someone, what's the halacha with what's going on before Pesach? How you do b'dikas chametz? Let's say a guy puts down 10 pieces of chametz, only finds 9. Now what does he do?
Oh, it says the mice ate the time.
Right. So it's a famous question. But what happens if you have no chametz? What happens if you didn't find any 10 pieces? Why do you have to burn the spoon? Or do you have to burn the spoon? All of these things, are you burning your lulav together with your chametz? Yeah. I don't know. So all of these type of things, you have to, it's very, very important to read about it. If you understand Hebrew well enough, I recommend reading Shevach HaMoedim. It's a sefer that actually, there's a volume right over here. Everyone's able to take one. Everyone's able to go ahead and read it. If you don't understand Hebrew so well, everyone has a smartphone. Please go onto Chabad.org. They have all of the halachas. It's very, very clear. It's very, very important. The only few other things I'm going to make mention is it is crucial to sell your chametz before Pesach. It's absolutely crucial. I know that Rabbi Shia downstairs sells the chametz. He'll be back Sunday. So, you could go ahead and you can sell your chametz through him. If you have another Rav to sell it through, go ahead, please sell it through that Rav. It's crucial to sell your chametz before Pesach. It's also crucial to know the times before Pesach. So in other words, even though from the 6th hour and on we don't eat, we're really not eating from the 4th hour and on. So please make sure that you know the times. It's available on, a website like Chabad.org. They'll have all the times. It's very, very important to be aware of these things. You don't want to make any of these mistakes. If you're going out and you are not going to be, let's say you're going away for Pesach, you're not going to be in your primary residence, ask a Rav how you go ahead and do b'dikas chametz. Just these are things, you can't go through everything in an hour, but these are things that are very, very important to be aware of. Also, what are we allowed to eat, right? Because some things we're not allowed to eat before Pesach. For example, chametz, right? Once it hits the 4th hour, you're not really eating chametz anymore. The 12th hour, the 8th hour. Once it hits the 12th hour, for sure you're not eating chametz. But what about eating a nice piece of roasted steak? Are you eating that before Pesach? So the answer is no, because anything that's similar to what's on your kaira, you're not supposed to eat. So again, there are many things that it's important to review before Pesach. Unfortunately, we don't have the time for it, but it's a mitzvah. These are all things that only come around once a year, so they're both special. A, it's special, and B, it's something that we're not 100% familiar with. So with this, like I said, before you do something, before you do b'dikas chametz, before you do bir chametz, before you take care of setting up your kaira. Yeah, 100%. Read the instructions before you assemble. If you don't know, there's a lot of knowledgeable people. They can help in this yeshiva, Baruch Hashem. They have very good staff. If you're in this yeshiva, I think in 99% of the shuls and kranites, if not 110% of the shuls and kranites, you have excellent rabbanim who are able to help. So just the main thing is don't just assume, because with Pesach it's very important that you're doing it 100% right. Okay, like we said before we began, there's no sign-in sheet, so I guess everyone could sign in. I don't know how. So someone make a sign-in sheet. If not, I could take a photo and I'll do it afterwards.
You make a
Napkin, take a napkin. Huh? Paper towel?
Napkin?
Do it in paper towel?
Okay.
Just do picture.
It's good, done. Everyone's in here, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? Not everyone's in here.
Take
You,
two
you need to
pictures.
step over there.
Well,
You step
yes.
over there.
Take two pictures.
There you go. Now everybody is in. Okay. I have downstairs in my car 2 pounds of matzah for all the participants of the koil. So please come downstairs. I want to give matzah to you guys. So that's that. Well, of course, there's no koil next Wednesday night. You're all going to be enjoying your seder like lach and mamish, like real ben chayrin. So enjoy, and koil resumes not.